Chapter 10, Lesson 6, Solve Quadratic Equations by the Quadratic Formula. So we talked about this in class, and this is a really useful and important formula. It's something you should memorize. It's called the Quadratic Formula, and just to make sure it's really clear, I'm going to walk you through what it says. It's for using to solve any equation that has an x squared in it, because that makes it a quadratic function. And basically it's probably the simplest way to do it, unless you can factor easily, because you'll get it right every time. But let's look and see. It says here x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. That's all over 2a. So that, like I said, you should memorize. We'll actually go through a little bit later where that comes from, but for right now, let's just do a couple of problems. So for this problem here, 5x squared minus 3 is equal to 4x. We did this one in class, but we're going to rearrange it. So it's 5x squared minus 4x minus 3 is equal to 0. So if we're figuring out the values here, a is going to be 5, b is going to be negative 4, and c is going to be negative 3. So now what you do is you plug them into that equation. So I'm going to rewrite it back up here. X is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. That's all divided by 2a. So now we just start plugging in numbers here. So x is going to be equal to negative b, so negative 4, so that's 4, plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 3. So just as a reminder, all I'm doing is I'm plugging in the values here into this equation. The last one I need to do is 2 times 5. So all I'm doing is I'm taking these values and I'm plugging them into there. So now we got to start simplifying. And where we're going to start simplifying is by dealing with that stuff underneath the radical. That's the square root expression. So I'm going to rewrite it over here. X is equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of, well, that's going to be 16 minus, well, minus 4, well, let's just multiply this out. 4 times 5, 20, times negative 3 is going to be negative 60. But we're subtracting it, so it's actually going to be plus 60. And that's all going to be over 2 times 5, which is just going to be 10. So when I write it out one more time here, and this is basically as far as we can go on this, your final answer on this is going to actually look like this. Now I know that looks kind of ugly and messy, but that is a lot easier to do it that way than it would be to complete the square, or certainly you wouldn't be able to factor it in any way to solve that, or even graphing it wouldn't give you as precise an answer. So let's look at another one here. It says here, use the quadratic formula to solve the equation. Round your solutions to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do these couple more problems. I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to write up here the equation. X is the quadratic equation. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. That's all going to be over 2a. So I'm just going to start plugging in numbers for this equation here, because what's the a value going to be? It's going to be 1 for the a value. It's going to be negative 12 for the b value, and that's negative 14 for the c value. So let's multiply this all out and see what happens. Or plug it all in and see what happens. So x is going to be equal to negative of, take the negative of negative 12, so that's going to be 12, plus or minus the square root of negative 12 squared is going to be negative 12 times negative 12, so that's 144. That one I can do in my head. The rest of this I'm going to actually write out. So 4 times 1 times negative 14. I really would recommend, actually, you know what? I'm going to go back here for a second here, because I should model this appropriately. So it's going to be negative 12 squared. I really recommend you actually write this all the way out. So then it's going to be 2 times 1. That one there I don't think I have to write out, so it's just going to be over 2. So now I'm going to deal with that, that stuff underneath the radical symbol. So it's going to be x is equal to 12 plus or minus. So now it's going to be 144. So 4 times 1 times negative 14. 4 times 1 is 4. Times negative 14. That's going to give me negative 56. So it's actually going to be plus 56. And then that's all going to be over 2. So now it's going to be x is equal to 12 plus or minus 156, or 144 plus 56. That's going to be the square root of 200. That's all it could be over 2. And so now all we're going to do is we're going to change this value. We're going to change this value into an actual value that we can work with, a decimal, and then we can do the math, and we'll see where we go from there. So the square root of 200 is going to be actually, if we round it to the hundredths place, it's going to be 14.14. So now what we're going to do is 12 plus 14.14. That's going to be 26.14. So we have to do 2 different solutions here. That's going to be divided by 2. And then when we divide that number by 2, we'll get 13.07. So that's our first solution. Our second solution, I'm just going to write it over here. It's going to be 12 minus that value. So when we minus that value, we're going to end up with negative 2.14. That's going to be over 2. So it's going to be negative 1.07. So that's how you solve these. I know that seems kind of complicated, but at the same time, it does work, and it will work every single time, no matter what. So look at that for a second. Pause it if you want to go through that again. I'm going to do this other one as well. So I just started to set it up here. So for this equation here, I just moved around so everything's on the same side, and then I define what my values are for A, B, and C. So now I'm just going to plug it in up there. I'm going to pause this for a second. Well, actually, I'll walk you through here. So x is going to be equal to negative 3 plus or minus square root of b squared. So that's 3 squared, so that's going to be 9. And as you get more comfortable with this, you can start sort of combining these steps. And that's going to be 9. And that's going to be c is negative 5. That's all over 2a, so that's going to be all over 18. So what's that equal to? It's going to be equal to negative 3. Then under here, it's going to be 9 minus, that's going to end up being plus, but 4 times 9, 36. 36 times 5 is 150 plus 30. 150 plus 30 is 180. So it's actually going to be plus 180 because 180, that's just what that's all multiplied out, and then we got that negative sign. So now it's going to be over 18 again. And so negative 3, sorry, plus or minus, I forgot that part there. Negative 3 plus or minus square root of 189. And actually, that's going to work out very nicely, I think. So let's see. So that value, square root of 189, is actually 13.75. So it's going to be negative 3 plus or minus the square root, not square root anymore because I just did that. So plus or minus 13.75. It's all going to be over 18. And then you just do the math. And so you end up with
Iris for the dark horse.
And at that point, you can just do the problem yourself because it's just adding or subtracting that 13.75 and then dividing the total by 18. So that's how you use the quadratic formula. We'll go over this more tomorrow. And thanks. Bye.